Pakistan's Air Force jets escorted the Iranian foreign minister's aircraft into Islamabad's airspace this morning. That detail is visible in the photographs. Pakistan's Press Information Department released an image today showing Iran's top diplomat walking across the tarmac at an airbase with Pakistan's foreign minister and army chief on either side of him. Iran's most senior diplomat under fighter escort, received by Pakistan's military commander. And the moment his plane touched down, Iran's foreign ministry published a statement. No meeting is planned to take place between Iran and the United States. Oil is trading at $106. The American vice president is not coming, and Washington has not said a word about the most alarming detail in the Iranian foreign minister's visit, which is not that he is in Pakistan. It is where he is going after Pakistan. Pay attention to the sequence he announced. 3 destinations in the order he named them. Islamabad first, Muscat second, Moscow third, Pakistan, then Oman, then Russia, not Washington. The last stop before Iran finalizes any position it brings to Islamabad is Moscow. Russia hears Iran's terms before America does. Everyone covering this is calling it routine diplomatic travel, Iran consulting its allies, standard foreign minister business. It is not routine. The sequence is the signal. And the question that nobody in any press briefing today has answered is this. When Iran tells Russia its private terms in Moscow, and Russia calibrates its support around what Iran actually needs, rather than what Iran says publicly, and America arrives in Islamabad to negotiate against a position that has already been shaped by what Russia agreed to sustain, what exactly does America think it is negotiating? One word, Russia. Not Russia as a diplomatic complication. Russia as a structural advantage Iran is handing to its partner before its adversary. That advantage matters more than anything being said publicly in Islamabad today, and it tells you exactly what America actually gets from this weekend's talks. It is called the first listener advantage, and once you understand how it works, you will read every Iran negotiation update differently from this point forward. Start with what the Moscow stop actually means and why the sequence is not coincidental. Iran and Russia signed a 20-year comprehensive strategic partnership treaty in January of 2026. Not a ceasefire document, not a diplomatic exchange. A 20-year treaty covering political, economic, security, and technological cooperation, specifically designed to reduce the impact of Western sanctions through financial and trade mechanisms outside the dollar system. A month after that treaty entered into force, the war started. The treaty is the structural foundation of the relationship the Iranian foreign minister is traveling to Moscow to coordinate on. The treaty includes something America has been unable to replicate, a consultations program signed for the years 2026 to 2028. The first such program in the history of Iran-Russia relations. 2 governments agreeing in advance in a signed document that their foreign ministries will consult each other regularly through 2028, not on an ad hoc basis, structurally, on a schedule. That program was signed 3 months before this war started. It is operating right now, and the foreign minister flying to Moscow is that program executing in real time during the most critical diplomatic window of the conflict. A major American cable news network confirmed what Russia brings to that consultation. Russia has been providing Iran with intelligence about the locations and movements of American troops, ships, and aircraft throughout this war. Not alleged, confirmed by multiple people familiar with American intelligence reporting. Russia knows where America's assets are. Russia tells Iran where America's assets are. Iran uses that information to manage its military position. And when the Iranian foreign minister arrives in Moscow to coordinate on regional developments, Russia has information about America's military posture that Iran needs before it decides what to offer Pakistan to convey to America. Now add the uranium dimension. Russia has repeatedly offered to take custody of Iran's enriched uranium, proposing to store or reprocess it on Russian soil. This is a direct competing offer to America's central demand. America wants Iran's uranium. Russia has publicly offered to take it instead. Reports indicate the American president rejected the Russian president's offer, not because it would not technically satisfy the non-proliferation requirement, but because it would give Russia permanent custodianship of Iran's nuclear legacy and leverage over Iran's program. Russia getting Iran's uranium is not America winning. It is Russia winning the nuclear argument, while America wins the headline. When the senior Iranian diplomat goes to Moscow, he is going to the country that has publicly placed a competing offer on the table for the most important unresolved issue in the negotiation. Russia gets to hear before America does what Iran's position is on the uranium question. Russia gets to calibrate its own offer to match what Iran needs. America arrives in Islamabad to negotiate against a Russia-Iran uranium position that has already been coordinated in Moscow. The sequence is not routine. The sequence is how Iran ensures that whatever it offers, America has already been shaped by what Russia is willing to do instead. What America does not know that Russia will know after Moscow is the specific information asymmetry that the Moscow stop creates. Iran's negotiating position has two layers. The public layer is what the foreign minister has said in every press conference and every foreign ministry statement. The Strait of Hormuz passage requires Iranian sovereign authority. Uranium enrichment is an inalienable right. No deal under conditions of continued blockade. These are the public positions. Every American negotiator knows them. Every Pakistani mediator has heard them 100 times. The private layer is different. It is the specific flexibility Iran has. The points where Iran would accept less than its public position in exchange for something that changes its strategic calculation. What guarantees on regime security is Iran actually willing to accept? What uranium timeline would Iran accept if Russia managed the storage rather than Washington controlling it? What formulation of Strait of Hormuz access language would let Iran claim sovereignty while allowing commercial ships to transit without explicit paramilitary coordination per vessel? Those private positions exist. Every negotiation has them, and the country that hears them first has a structural advantage over the country that hears them second. Russia hears Iran's private positions in Moscow before American negotiators land in Islamabad. Russia then knows what Iran will actually accept, the real floor of Iran's flexibility, and can calibrate its own diplomatic positioning accordingly. If Russia wants to be the facilitator of the post-war settlement, knowing Iran's private floor before America does, lets Russia design proposals that land just above that floor. Russia can offer America solutions that Iran will accept precisely because Russia knows where Iran's acceptance threshold actually is. America is negotiating without that information. Russia has it. America's intelligence services know a great deal about Iran. They know the military infrastructure, the economic data, the paramilitary command structure, the internal factional dynamics. What they do not know because they cannot know it from signals intelligence alone is what Iran privately told Russia in a room in Moscow that Iran has not told anyone else. That gap between what America knows from intelligence and what Russia knows from direct consultation is the first listener advantage, and it is the advantage Iran's top diplomat is delivering to Moscow on this tour. Here is what the historical parallel tells us. Because a major Asian power has seen this specific move before, and its reading of what it means is worth understanding. The closest historical parallel is not the Cold War, and it is not Japan in 1941. It is the 1973 Arab oil embargo, when Egypt and Syria were preparing to launch a major war, and needed to ensure that an oil embargo would have political impact rather than just economic cost. They did not consult America. They consulted the Soviet Union first. The Soviets were told the military plan. The Soviets calibrated their support accordingly. They airlifted weapons to Egypt during the war. They managed their diplomatic positioning to maximize the pressure on America. And when the ceasefire negotiations happened, the Soviets were not surprised by anything Egypt proposed, because the Soviets had heard Egypt's terms before the war started. America was negotiating the ceasefire against an Egyptian position that had already been shaped by Soviet consultation. America did not know where Egypt's real flexibility was, because the Soviets knew it, and Egypt had calibrated its public position around what the Soviets could support rather than around what America wanted to hear. The parallel for today is precise. Iran going to Moscow is Iran ensuring that Russia knows its real terms before America does. Russia calibrates its support, its uranium offer, its diplomatic cover, its satellite intelligence, its United Nations Security Council veto, around what Iran actually needs rather than what Iran publicly says it needs. And America arrives in Islamabad to negotiate against a position that has already been shaped by what Russia can sustain. That same major Asian power has seen this pattern because it was the country that studied the 1973 playbook and refined it. Its own diplomatic strategy in this conflict, the silent support, the dark fleet, the alternative payment system, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, is precisely this pattern applied to economics rather than military supply. It did not publicly announce its support for Iran. It built the system that lets Iran sustain resistance without it needing to be publicly accountable for that resistance. Russia's support is the military and diplomatic version of the same pattern. First listener, silent sustainer, public deniability. Now let me name the two paths the first listener advantage produces, because this framework ends one of two ways, and understanding both tells you what to watch. The first path is the Russia-shaped deal. Iran tells Russia its private terms in Moscow. Russia calibrates its uranium offer to match exactly what Iran can accept. The Iranian foreign minister arrives in Islamabad carrying a position that incorporates what Russia has agreed to sustain. America proposes something. Pakistan conveys it to Iran. Iran rejects or modifies based on what Russia agreed in Moscow. The final deal, if there is one, has Russia's fingerprints on every clause that matters. The uranium clause, the Strait of Hormuz clause, the sanctions relief timing. America calls it a diplomatic victory. Russia calls it the result of its facilitation role. Iran calls it a deal it shaped on its own terms. Nobody says publicly that the terms were set in a Moscow conversation that America was not in. That is the Russia-shaped deal. America wins the headline. Russia wins the architecture of the post-war order. The second path is the signal without a deal. Iran tells Russia in Moscow that no deal on current American terms is acceptable, and that Iran is prepared to continue the endurance war. Russia endorses that position, calibrating its uranium offer to stay on the table without forcing Iran to accept it, maintaining its United Nations Security Council veto as diplomatic cover, continuing its satellite intelligence sharing without publicizing it. Iran arrives in Islamabad carrying a position shaped by Russian endorsement of continued resistance. America's proposal in Islamabad does not reach Iran's private floor. The floor Russia knows, but America does not. The talks fail. Iran returns to the ceasefire without deal posture. Russia continues earning elevated revenues from sustained high oil prices. China continues receiving substantial volumes of Iranian crude through the Dark Fleet. And the endurance war extends with Russia and China both positioned to profit from its continuation. China is watching both paths. China has built the infrastructure to profit from both. The enormous strategic petroleum reserve means China can absorb the energy disruption in Path 2. The Dark Fleet means China's Iranian crude continues arriving regardless of which path the negotiation takes. And China's silence about the Moscow stop, no statement, no commentary, no suggestion that Iran consulting Russia before the Islamabad round is worth noting, tells you China has already calculated which path its interests best navigate. Let me steelman the American position, because the argument that Russia hearing Iran's terms first does not change the fundamental negotiation has real weight. America's argument is that Moscow's role in this negotiation is already fully accounted for. The American president reportedly rejected the Russian president's uranium offer. America knows Russia is providing Iran with intelligence. The intelligence community has been tracking the Russia-Iran coordination throughout this conflict. America is not walking into Islamabad blind to Russia's role and the specific positions Russia holds. Support for Iran's enrichment rights and opposition to American demands on the nuclear question are publicly known. Russia has stated them. The Russian foreign minister has stated them. Knowing that Russia supports Iran's position does not require hearing Iran's private terms in Moscow. America can model what Russia will sustain based on what Russia has already said publicly. The Steelman also argues that Iran consulting Russia before America is not new. The Iranian foreign minister confirmed months ago that military cooperation with Russia continues. The Russia-Iran strategic partnership is public. Iran and Russia coordinating diplomatic positions before talking to America is the established pattern of the relationship, not a new strategic move. America factors that coordination into every analysis. American officials arriving in Islamabad knowing Russia has been consulted is not the same as arriving without knowledge of the Russia-Iran relationship. On the uranium specifically, the Steelman argues that Russia taking Iran's uranium would actually serve American interests in a specific scenario. If Iran gives Russia the uranium and calls it a sovereignty-preserving arrangement, and America can call it denuclearization, even though Russia is the custodian, both sides get something from the deal. America gets the headline, Russia gets the leverage. Iran gets to claim it did not hand its strategic asset to its adversary. A three-way arrangement that lets each government tell its domestic audience a different story about what happened to the uranium is not a defeat for America. It is diplomacy. All of that is coherent. America knows Russia's role. The Russia-Iran coordination is not a surprise, and a trilateral uranium arrangement could serve everyone's interests differently framed. But here is what the Steelman cannot account for. The specific information the Iranian foreign minister carries to Moscow is not Russia's public position. It is Iran's private position. The real floor of flexibility that Iran has not shared with Pakistan, has not shared with Oman, and will not share with America's delegation. Russia does not need to tell America what it heard. Russia just needs to use what it heard to calibrate its own offer before America makes its offer. The information asymmetry operates without Russia ever disclosing it. America cannot model what Russia will sustain based on public statements, because Russia's decision about what to sustain will be based on private information America does not have. That gap is real, and it is structural, and it grows with every hour that passes between when the Iranian foreign minister lands in Moscow and when American negotiators land in Islamabad. Watch three things as this diplomatic tour runs. The first is the content of any Russia-Iran joint statement after the Moscow meeting. Joint statements between foreign ministers are drafted in advance and negotiated between delegations before they are published. The language that makes it into the final text tells you what both sides agreed to put on the record. Watch specifically for any language about uranium management, about Strait of Hormuz navigation rights, or about the framework for a post-war settlement. If the Russia-Iran joint statement after Moscow includes specific language on any of those three issues that was not in previous Russia-Iran communications, the Iranian foreign minister brought something new to Moscow, and Russia agreed to publicly support it. That public support then becomes the floor that America's Islamabad proposal has to reach before Iran will accept it. Watch also the specific phrasing about the uranium question. Russia has publicly offered to take Iran's enriched uranium. The American president has reportedly rejected that offer. If the Moscow joint statement includes language that Russia's offer is still on the table and that Iran considers it a viable arrangement, Russia and Iran have publicly coordinated their position on the central unresolved issue before America's delegation lands in Islamabad. America will be negotiating against a Russia-Iran joint position on uranium that was set in Moscow, published after Moscow, and cannot be withdrawn without Russia publicly reversing a stated commitment. That is not a negotiating complication. That is Russia setting the terms of what America can achieve before the room opens. The second is whether the American president or any senior American official names the Moscow stop specifically in any public statement before or during the Islamabad talks. America named China on financial media when the weapons ship was intercepted. America has not named Russia's intelligence sharing publicly. If America does not name the Moscow stop as a complicating factor in the Islamabad talks, if no State Department briefing, no White House statement, no senior official press conference addresses what Russia hears in Moscow and what that means for the American position, that is America deciding the Moscow first problem cannot be named without creating a confrontation with Russia that America cannot manage before the upcoming major power summit and the Russian president's planned visit to Beijing in the same window. America absorbs the information asymmetry rather than confronting it. The third is the specific uranium language in whatever framework emerges from Islamabad. If the uranium solution includes Russia as the custodian, America has accepted the Russia first structure, even if America does not acknowledge it. Russia, hearing Iran's terms, first produced a Russia-shaped uranium solution. America calling that solution a win is America describing the outcome without naming what produced it. Watch for any mention of third-party uranium custody in the Islamabad framework. If Russia is named as the custodian, the first listener advantage has produced its result. Russia shaped the central outcome of the negotiation without firing a shot, without spending a dollar, and without appearing in any American press briefing as a factor in the deal's design. Push back on this if you see it differently. Read the Iranian foreign minister's exact post on social media. The sequence he named, the purpose he stated, the phrase "our neighbors are our priority," and ask which neighbor America is in that framing. Read the major cable networks report on Russia providing Iran with intelligence about American troop and ship locations, and ask what that intelligence sharing means for what Russia knows about America's military position when the Iranian diplomat arrives to coordinate. Read the January 2026 Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty and the 2026 to 2028 Consultations Program and ask what it means for a country to have a signed scheduled consultations agreement with its strategic partner while simultaneously negotiating with its adversary. And then ask the question that America's press briefings are not asking today. Russia hears Iran's terms in Moscow. America hears Iran's terms through Pakistan. Pakistan hears what Iran is willing to share with a mediator. Russia hears what Iran is willing to share with a partner. Those are not the same thing, and whatever is in the gap between those two conversations is what determines whether the deal America gets from Islamabad is the deal Iran actually agreed to, or the deal Iran was willing to offer before it went to Moscow.